Hello, hello. Welcome to Fine, I'll Talk About It, the podcast where we say the quiet parts out loud. Real, unfiltered talk that's straight to the point and no fake positivity. I'm your host, Danielle Young, and today I'm joined by Kate Shipp. Kate is a holistic trauma specialist and international best-selling author with over 14 years of experience helping individuals transform trauma, stress, and survival patterns into safety, self-trust, and freedom. And side note, she's one of my former yoga teachers. On today's episode, we are talking about trauma recovery and not settling for fine. Kate, welcome to Fine, I'll Talk About It.
Thank you. I'm so excited, grateful to be here.
Yeah, I am super grateful you are here. It is so good to see you again. Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about you and why the subject of not settling for fine speaks to you?
Yeah. I love the title of this podcast, by the way.
Thank you. I get that a lot,
You have,
actually.
you have an awesome voice for this.
Thank you.
Really, it's kind of amazing to hear. I was
Thank
taken
you.
aback by that for a moment. I've been on several podcasts. I'm like, wow, she has like a voice for this. Definitely. Okay.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. So, as Danielle said, I've been in trauma recovery work for going on 15 years, but it really was my life. So, from the time I was young, there was a lot of developmental trauma, complex trauma, and it really erupted in my body in 2016. So, I had already been doing the work that I do now and had then walked through my own lived experience of recovery from complex trauma and a lot of different integrative modalities. I recognize the power of Eastern and Western medicine combined in this. And through my own lived experience, outside looking in, people would have thought I had an extremely beautiful life. I had the best of the best, a wonderful husband, great children, doing what I love, building a private practice, owning a yoga studio. And then it was like a bomb went off inside of me and all of the unprocessed pain, some of it that I didn't even remember, started coming up. So, sexual trauma, emotional neglect, rape. There were things that I did remember, things that I didn't. And my body and nervous system just said enough. And so, walking through my own healing journey, I remember in about 2018, 19, getting to a point where it was like I felt really good again. I had been through some deep work. I continued to do deep work, but I knew I was on the other side of the worst of it at that point. And then I remember feeling like, oh, life is good, right? Life is fine. And that felt so wonderful. And like I had worked so incredibly hard to get to that point that it was this like feeling of an exhale and beautiful things happening in life again, career shifting, business growing, all of these things. And what I also believe is that we're not meant to settle for fine. And so, what I've learned through the years as my life has shifted again and again, and can say the life I live now is absolutely incredible compared to the life I lived in 2016 and then even in 2018, is I think we can get to this when we've lived like I use a simple scale for myself of like if 0 is the worst of the worst and 10 is the best of the best. I lived my life probably about a 2 for a long time. And I didn't know that I was at a 2. I was that person that you had no idea I was anxious all the time. I always say I was like a duck, right? It looked like smooth sailing on the surface and inside was like this, oh my God, like
Yeah.
get me out of here. And doing a lot of different therapies to heal those parts of myself and integrate them. I could say I had gotten up to probably about like a 6 or a 7. And so life was good. And then
Yeah.
I feel like things happened in my life going into the 3rd year now of losing my dad, which rocked my world. And had I not done the work I had done prior to, that probably would have been a very different kind of spiral. And after losing him and reevaluating some things, I always say I felt like I was struck like lightning. Like there was this moment, and I'll never forget the moment. I was actually in Scotland in September of 24, and it was like I was woke up out of a trance. And
Ugh.
it felt like I'd been struck by lightning. I was like, what is happening? And it was all of a sudden there was this awareness of, don't you dare settle for fine. Don't you
Wow.
dare settle for this. And I laughed because I love Ted Lasso and it was like Royce Kent voice in my head saying like, don't you dare settle for fine. And then there was this awareness of, wow, right? How much have I been in that like range of, 7 out of 10, not realizing there's even more available. And because I lived at a 2, a 7 felt like 100.
Hmm. Yeah.
And this past year and a half, really digging in with myself and my life and realigning even more into creating a life where I feel happy, where I feel joyful, where I feel excited, and really having to evaluate the things that I did settle into that were good enough then, but were not nearly what I want now.
Yeah. Wow. So what did you discover that you really needed, that you were holding on to, that really needed to go? Because I think people, when they look at their life and they say, "Oh, I'm good, things are fine," there's no real way for them to identify like
Mhm.
what's not fine because everything around you seems fine. So how did you identify those things?
I realized I had created what I call a false sense of safety, meaning I had created this idea, and a lot of this is unconscious, right? We're not doing this intentionally, right? That I was safe if my life was safe. Meaning, if things went the way I wanted them to go, if other people showed up a certain way, if I could manage, control, um, predict or strategize, or like all the things that I think as humans we want to feel like we have. And then recognizing true safety comes from within me. It comes from my ability to work with my own nervous system. It's intrinsic. It's something that I can evaluate and adjust and shift and manage, and also get really honest with what feels safe and what doesn't feel safe for me. And that was more of behaviors, beliefs, relationships, career things. And so there was that moment that said, like, how much of this idea of life is safe was constructed from fear?
Mm,
And that for so long, and I didn't know, you don't know till you know, that
right.
I built these like walls of safety that were actually fear. And so living inside that felt fine, felt safe enough, but it wasn't actually ever safe. It was a low level, hyper vigilant, fear based existence that was a mask for I'm safe in this, when really I felt like I was suffocating. But like, I need more space. I need more breathing room. I need more allowance to be who I am, to get to know myself, to explore, to like just get creative in ways that I hadn't. And my body would start to constrict. It was like, I feel safe. Then why am I like this?
Yeah.
If my posturing is definitely not what someone would perceive as safe, I had to evaluate. So, as someone who focuses so heavily on embodiment and somatics, it was my body told a story that was different than my mind. And I had to start evaluating that. And what I have found in working with people is when you are craving safety, because maybe you never had it your whole life, maybe you never felt safe ever, and you start to feel safe, then there can be this like, I don't want to lose that feeling. I've
Hmm.
searched forever to find it. But most of the time, I'm seeing that they're associating safety with something outside of themselves that could be taken. And then they're back right where they were. So there's the shift between we want life to feel safe enough in our relationships, in the situations, in our lifestyle, but really we want to start learning how to access that felt sense of safety from inside our body.
Exactly. Yeah. And it does all start with the nervous system. I mean,
Mhm.
the nervous system is the basis for how we perceive, believe, and show up in the world.
Yeah. And
And
it blew my mind. I mean, when I met you, I mean, I don't remember back, gosh,
it's
2017,
2018.
18. Okay. I figured it was
Yeah.
around that frame. I mean, I'd been a yoga therapist for 7 years at that point. That's my original background in training in holistic health. I've been a certified yoga therapist since 2012 and working in that field and with a lot of different capacities, a lot of chronic pain specialty, sexual trauma, PTSD, complex PTSD. And the trainings that I went through at the time, there wasn't as much information as there is now about the nervous system. Polyvagal theory wasn't like this huge thing. I'm now polyvagal informed, took a training, read a lot, studied a lot. I'm like, gosh, if I knew that then,
Right.
you if I understood and I don't know that there's ever full understanding of the nervous system because it's so intricate in its design. But if
Yeah.
we really understood that as like a foundational baseline of there's so much happening automatically that isn't within our control to help us survive. And yet, with awareness, we do have the ability to shift what we're experiencing something when we know how to work with our nervous system. I mean, I think
Exactly.
just, I feel I wish everyone had the ability to learn some of those simple teachings because I feel like had I known that, my journey would have been a lot easier.
Yeah. Yeah. Same. I went through all my trauma back in, late 90s, well, childhood, but then the real trauma came late 90s, early 2000s, and there was nothing.
No.
It was the suck it up and get over it mentality. I mean, it was just deal with it, move on, do your thing, and don't look back. And I mean, that's how I started my journey. It was like, okay, suck it up, move on. And I didn't realize what I was doing to myself until years later when it was like, oh, oops, now I have an autoimmune disorder.
Mhm.
People need to understand that this stuff does manifest things in your body.
Absolutely.
It, causes so many issues. And that's why I got certified in nervous system training. And that's why I teach it as well, because you cannot go through trauma and come out on the other side of it without first addressing the nervous system. There's no way around it.
I love that we both speak into this and teach on it and share on it because in my early healing stages, it wasn't talked about. And, I love a lot of different modalities. I love EMDR. I love
Uh-huh.
somatics. I love IFS. I mean, I've done somatic parts work for myself for years, trained in it. Like, there's so many things that I love. But if we're not linking in nervous system informed care with this, then we're missing the foundation of what starts regenerating ourselves from the inside out.
Right.
I think you can have the best therapies. And if your nervous system doesn't feel safe enough to start to, soften, I'll just use the word soften, then all of those therapies aren't going to do anything.
Right.
And it can be really frustrating. And I think
Yeah.
that's why, like, I've been blessed to have a very, very fruitful business and practice and career. And I have a lot of people that come to me that have done other therapies for 10, 15, 20 years and they haven't seen, I mean, it all has its place. And I think everything gets us to the next thing. But there's also this, why isn't this working? How come this is helping? I'm like, if we don't bring the body into the therapy and if we don't work with the nervous system as it exists within you now, we're not going to see the healing shifts that you're looking for.
Right. Right. And it bugs me when I see therapists, and especially online here lately, for some reason, I've been seeing a lot of it. But I see these therapists who are saying things like, if I see one more life coach bring up the nervous system, I'm going to scream. And I get so perturbed at this stuff because it's like, okay, I understand that you have education in your modality, but there are other things out there that work. And talk therapy, it's great in conjunction with body work.
Hmm.
Trauma is not stored in the language centers of the brain. So, talking about it, you're re traumatizing yourself because your body is reliving that without working through it. So, for me, talk therapy, it's great as a supplement, but if you're not adding body work into it, then you're just perpetuating the cycle. Anxiety, autoimmunity, adrenal burnout. I mean, all of these things, you will deplete your cortisol, you will deplete your adrenal glands, you will end up with so many medical issues that sometimes could be irreversible. And that's why I don't like the tribalism when it comes to healing.
I agree with you. I had long before, I saw my first psychiatrist, had a mental health break, these things, I had extremely low blood pressure. I had horrific experiences in early labor and delivery with my children. Thankfully, they were healthy, but my body was having a really hard time. I had severe adrenal burnout. Signs and symptoms of something else is really going on here, but nobody, medical provider asked.
Right.
And nobody said like, "Hey, is there anything like, is there any trauma from your past? Was there anything like this?" Instead it was like, "Have a little more salt," because my blood sugar was so low. Like, I'll never forget that doctor, but she's like, "Have a little more salt and have some black coffee. Like, let's get your blood pressure up." And I laugh at it now because I'm thinking, wow, we were so ill-informed
Yeah.
on the effects that trauma can have. And I want to say that for a long time, people talked about trauma and they thought war veterans, which is one arena of trauma. But
Yeah.
there's so much more. And I think the lack of awareness and the lack of understanding is what created some of these stigmas around this, and why, I've been so grateful for some of the voices that have come forward. And there's a lot of voices that have been for decades in this, and for whatever reason, now people are more receptive. But it's recognizing that when we work with the body and then learn how to allow the mind to follow, we're going to see much more healing benefits. And part of what I really focus on is helping to educate people on what trauma is. I look at trauma and I talk with people about it. I look at it as the unprocessed emotions that are stored within the nervous system.
Hmm.
And I say emotions because I use that. Some people, when I say energy, they get all freaked out, right? That's a whole nother conversation.
It's you woo woo, Kate.
Word energy. You use this all day, but energy's too woo woo, right?
Yeah.
Anyhow, right? It's recognizing that when we don't have the resourcing, the support, the awareness, the capacity, and we have an emotional response and we don't get to complete the cycle of that emotion, it gets stored somewhere.
Hmm.
And when that emotional experience gets reactivated over and over and over again, then it becomes this bigger, dis-ease within the body, whether that's inflammation, whether it's symptomatic of like frozen shoulder or an autoimmune or brain fog or digestive issues, whatever, name it, right?
Right.
There's always this curiosity on, what's being held there. I think symptoms are important, and some people need to subdue symptoms before they work through the root cause of why those symptoms are there. But I get curious in the work I do of what is the emotional pattern that's holding in the body through the nervous system, through the connective tissue, that is the only way to get your attention is to create some sort of discomfort or illness or what have you.
Right.
And I think because we're a culture that has been brought up in, a lot of symptomatic relief or pill-based relief and whatever form that comes in, we're not taught how to be with ourselves in gentle, loving ways to get curious around what is actually happening within me.
Yeah.
We don't know how to sit safely with our own emotions and the sensations of our emotions in our body.
Right. Well, it's uncomfortable. And we as a whole do not know how to deal with uncomfortable because we were never taught how to deal with uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable means something's wrong. So, a couple generations before me, if something's wrong, you go to the doctor and you get prescribed, something, and you take that, and that should quote unquote heal you. And now we know better. And I wish that there was more of this out there. Like, I wish more people were having these conversations because I think it would be so beneficial for people to know that, yeah, there is better living through chemistry, but what is the deeper issue? You know, like, what is the root cause of that? And if we could just sit with ourselves and, say, okay, what is happening and get those answered, then it would be so much easier. But
Yeah.
then the drug companies would have a holy shit fit about that because,
And there's always gonna be people who would prefer the pill over the process.
right. Yeah.
They when I had big mental health break in 2016 and ended up checking myself into a hospital for 5 days because I had had an allergic reaction to a psych med. The medical provider I was seeing at that time was unfortunately very unkind and had me on hormone therapy and an SSRI, and I was on way too much hormone and had an allergic reaction to the SSRI and ended up going to the ER because I something was wrong, and then they're like, "You're having an allergic reaction to the meds. Like, let's get you balanced back out, send you home, talk to your doctor." And the doctor's like, "I don't know what more to do with you. So come off the hormone, come off the SSRI." And within 2 days of that, I was a mess. And I always like thank God for my consciousness and self-awareness and the thousands of hours of yoga therapy training. So I remember waking up a few days later in the morning and being like, something has shifted in my mind and in my brain. I'm not okay. And
Mm.
it was like I knew I was not going to be okay if I didn't get other help. And so called some friends, figured out where I was going to go. And when I got to the hospital, they're like, we need to keep you under observation to see if your body's going to respond well to this med. And so to me, it was all very like, I'll just say divine orchestration of things because the psychiatrist I met in that hospital was a MD in psychiatry, a PhD in neuroscience, a Kundalini yoga teacher, and a Tai Chi master.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember he called me in and he's like, "Hey, I want you to be my patient when you're out of here." And I'm like, "Why?" And he said, "I think I understand you." And he's like, "You know all of these practices and all of these teachings, and your body is having a hard time with medication." And he said, "Really?" He's like, "A lot of your understanding of energy and spirit is in conflict with the trauma that's existing in your body." And I'd never heard a doctor use this language. So I was really curious. Right, and so he did become his patient after, and we had conversations in my appointments with him. I did end up going on a low-level psych med for about 6 months. I was fine on it. I didn't see any big improvement, chose a different kind of route, but what he and I would discuss a lot was and he helped me understand because I was really resistant to meds because of some things that had happened when I was 18, where I had been drugged and overdosed and left to die. Basically, I died twice in a hospital and then have been sensitive ever since. And so from that point, my body's been more highly sensitive to medications. And I know that's a nervous system thing too.
Yeah.
But when he and I were talking about this, and I was like, I don't want to have to take this medicine. And because I'm a yoga therapist, right? I shouldn't need this stuff, right? That's a whole nother stigma.
Right.
Holistic community, like, shaming people who use Western medicine.
Yeah.
But one of the things he said, he's like, your nervous system is so overwhelmed right now with all of the trauma trying to find its way out and work itself through. He's like, that the medication is going to subdue that over the nervous system's, fight or flight extreme so that you can do the therapy to heal and process it out. He's like, if we don't subdue and soften the symptoms, your nervous system will not feel safe enough to let you heal.
Right.
And that was a really helpful conversation to understand acute level care in a certain way to then support the body to allow for enough internal safety for healing to happen.
Mhm.
And he was very supportive of all these other more Eastern modalities that I was trained in and understood them and supported them. But he also said, look, like if people don't start recognizing that there is this integrative point between the two where it can be the best of the best, like people suffer on either end. And I wish there were more doctors like him that understood the balance of the two and how they can work together. And that also, you have to work again, he was really teaching like you have to work with the body to be able to resolve this. And this was someone who was, now one of the, I think, lead psychs at places like the Meadows and things like that. Where he felt like he could do deeper work with people instead of maybe he sees someone once every 3 to 6 months for a medication update.
Yeah.
And so I feel like there are pockets of these conversations happening, but then also I think there's so much competition in what's better instead of like what's best is what works for each individual person. There
Yeah.
is no better. There's
Right.
not this therapy's great and this isn't and this is better. It's like what individual practices, processes, therapies, modalities, medicines are the right combination to help that individual person's nervous system function as optimally as it can.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and people don't understand. They don't, and, I did not know anything about certain modalities until I started reading about different things and going through my own healing journey. I never knew about EMDR. I didn't know about IFS. I didn't know about any of that stuff. And I'll tell you, like, EMDR pulled me out of a nervous breakdown 3 years ago. So, I think the more awareness that we can bring, and like I said, I wish more people talked about this stuff, you know, and I've had people tell me the EMDR was just too much for them.
I've had a
It's like,
lot of people come to me and
okay.
say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I learned it was interesting. My therapist that I've seen going on 7 years, and we do a lot of EMDR together, but it's somatic based because she knows I work with the body. So I do my body work stuff with it while we're in EMDR. So I'm aware of what's happening in my body. We do a lot of parts work with the EMDR. I do a lot of breath therapy with things with it. But one of the things she taught me that I had no idea was she said that depending on what's happening in the person's brain will also determine whether EMDR is going to be beneficial. And that she does a lot of neurofeedback and a lot of brain scans, and she'll sometimes brain scan someone first to see what's going on in their brain to then determine which modality is actually going to match what they need. And I was like, that's fascinating.
That is really fascinating.
Because otherwise, someone could spend so much time doing a therapy that is, evidentially based to be helpful, yet won't work for them if their brain doesn't function the way that that therapy works.
Right.
Oh, and I think for me, there's also this like, I started doing breath therapy back in 2019. And that's a lot of what I work with people now is integral breath therapy. Is like when we are working with the breath in a specific way, it actually works with the rhythms of the nervous system to bring up that which is ready to clear out without flooding the nervous system out. Like when you're working with the nervous system, there's this natural kind of rhythm and cadence that starts happening. And when you have the ability to understand the power of the breath and how to work with it, I found for people, it's some of the least re-traumatizing of any therapy I've ever seen for that reason.
Yeah.
And it's like almost like a self-modulating experience that it can certainly be overly cathartic for people if it's not facilitated correctly, much like anything else could be.
Right.
Uh, I also start looking at like this design of ourselves and the ways that we were created for healing if given the right environments too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It all starts when the body knows it's safe or when it thinks it's safe,
Yeah.
you know?
And you kind of circles us back to some of the stuff we were talking about at the beginning of like this don't settle for fine is I had a craving for feeling safe because I'd been abused from the time I was 1 year old on. And maybe before, I don't know. That's the youngest memory I've had. I don't really care to know if it's much younger than that, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And severe sexual trauma. And so, like, my body never knew safety. It never developed in safety. So when people would ask, like, what does it feel like to be safe? Like, I don't know. But, those types of traumatic experiences ended when I was about 6. And then what was fascinating is I serendipitously found horses when I was 8 and like was with horses as much as I could be, but I had no idea that it was actually becoming more therapeutic. I was an English jumper and I would be at the barn as much as I could. And I didn't know that I was actually healing my nervous system with the horses at the time. And so when people would say later, like, what helped you learn how to feel safe? I was like, horses. I always felt safe, whatever, 2,000-pound animals, I felt safe. Like,
Yeah.
the bigger the better for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Get me around another human, I was like, "Stay away from me." Like, "Don't come
Right.
near." But a horse
Yeah.
but I think intuitively, we also know that which is safe for us, but when you've had these traumatic experiences, your intuition gets overridden by survival. So
Yeah.
we start cutting the instinct out, and when we're in this, repairing of healing after traumatic experiences, we start reconnecting with the intuition, with that authentic knowing of what's right for us and what isn't. And, when I've worked with people where they kind of get to that point in their healing where they know they've got to start making some changes to welcome, more than fine into their life. And I think that's where some people stall out because they have to start looking at their lifestyle,
Hmm.
start looking at maybe their diet, their career, their relationships, the things that were brought into their life or that they created in their life when they were either in survival, in a constant trauma response, or when they were like, okay, things are fine. I'm scared to lose this kind of comfort and safety because I don't know how that's going to feel.
Right. Fear of the unknown. Yeah. Yeah. I know. I went through the same thing. Yeah. It was like after I got out of my abusive relationship, I jumped into another relationship and I thought, well, he doesn't hit me, so it's fine.
It's so much
And
better than it was.
yeah, because and we conditionalize everything. So if this, then that.
Mhm,
And it's like, well, if this didn't happen, then okay, I'm good. I'm if this happened over here, I'm good over here. And our body adjusts to that, right? But we're still in that fight or flight. It's just we're not aware of it now as much as we were before. We're not as hypervigilant as what we were before because maybe this person over here doesn't do certain things that this person did, or maybe this situation was way more harmful than this situation is over here. But our body knows, and it's that fear of the unknown. Well, if I'm leaving safe, quote unquote safe,
mhm,
then what if I don't ever find it again? Then what happens? I'm leaving this box and I'm jumping into the ocean of unknown. It's like jumping out of the boat. Like, do I swim to shore? Am I going to drown? I mean, is Coast Guard going to come and find me? There's all of these what ifs that you can't answer because you're looking for external validation. You're looking
mhm.
for another thing to tell you how to be safe or what to do to feel safe when it's all right. It's internal, like it's all in here. And when we stop looking for the Coast Guard to come and save us, we just float
Yeah, we become the Coast Guard.
or we become the Coast Guard.
Yeah, right? We become what we needed that
Yeah,
we didn't know we were capable of being.
right.
Yeah, I
And then
go ahead.
safe takes on a whole other definition.
Yeah, and that's a whole different level of experience inside your own body. I mean, I remember when, like, that shift happened, I was like, "Wow." I had no idea,
Yeah.
no idea. Kinda speaking into what you were sharing about your, relationship and leaving one and getting into another. Um, I was reading something David Bedrick is a beautiful teacher on unshaming, and he had shared something on Instagram a while back that really touched my heart, and it was like when he was talking about clients that he has regularly that come in with a complexity of childhood trauma and, they stay in relationships or jobs or situations where they actually don't feel very safe because they were conditioned early on in life without the agency to leave. Like when you're a child, you can't just leave unsafe situations. You have to adapt. And that adaptation becomes how you survived that which felt unsurvivable. And so as an adult, then you tend to put yourself in very similar situations, not consciously. It's an unconscious thing. The nervous system is doing what the nervous system does,
Right.
and we repeat cycles. But what he was saying was that a lot of times those adults then in their relationships and their jobs, like they won't leave until something bad happens because they were conditioned early on in life that bad things happen, but I have to stay because I don't have anywhere to go. So as adults then, they will wait and he'll hear people say this all the time, "Well, it's not that bad,"
Hmm.
or, "It's not bad enough," or, "I'm waiting for things to get worse before I leave." And that's where he knows there's this, sweet child inside that's screaming in pain, "Someone save me," because nobody protected me. And it really hit my heart because I've worked with people, I've lived through things like this where it's some people don't realize how worthy they are of being happy, of enjoying their life, and they just wait for things to get worse and worse and worse, so then they feel justified in leaving.
Right. Or someone in their childhood told them that they didn't deserve better.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I hear that a lot. We learn all of our beliefs by the time we're 6. So if you had that childhood where you weren't nurtured, you weren't loved, you weren't told you can be whoever you want to be, you weren't led down that path and you were meant to believe, I'm a burden or I don't deserve good things. I don't deserve nice things. This is how my life is going to be because this is how my family is. You know, there are cycle breakers for a reason. I'm actually one of them. I refused to live like my family. I wasn't going to settle for fine. I wanted more than that. But it takes guts. And I think a lot of people don't think because of the conditioning that they can be that person because we're talking, you're isolating people. You're setting boundaries with people that they're not going to like. And
can get lonely.
it does. It gets very lonely. It gets very isolating. And that's when the trust in yourself is really tested. I feel like with that, it's either sink or swim. When you put yourself in that situation, it's like, okay, I'm not doing this. I'm not living like this. I am going to be a better person than, whenever, or I'm going to be better than this person, or I'm going to move out of this mindset. It's hard to understand that you are going to lose people. And for those
Absolutely.
of us who grew up thinking that we were a burden, thinking that nobody likes me, who were bullied a lot, that's really, really painful. And it adds so much onto the nervous system as well. But I feel like at that point, it's probably much easier to recognize and deal with because you're actively taking steps like, okay, I know I need to do this. Bam. Okay, recognized. Work. And I'm finding that with clients too. I'm the people who tell me that I never had confidence growing up. I never thought I could do, you know, insert thing here. It's like, okay, that's because you were preconditioned to think that you weren't, that
Yeah.
you never could.
And for whatever reason, believing people's projections is also what created some kind of bare minimum need being met at those younger ages. And then at some point, I think we're given the opportunity to start questioning those things. And then whether there's availability, resourcing, privilege, all the things to get to do the therapies, the processes, get the help we need to get better. That's all a whole nother conversation of things. But this
Yeah.
recognition that I think, a phrase that I've used that one of my mentors gave me was like, no longer will I, and fill that in. And it becomes more of a self respect instead of self abandonment. Like, I think in childhood complexities of trauma, we're taught self abandonment for survival.
Hmm.
So then there becomes the perpetuating pattern of my needs last, let me appease, let me submit, let me please others. That more of like fawning response of the nervous system that's talked about more now, thankfully, is we look like we're really high functioning, but we're inside either like, oh my gosh, I'm either going to have a panic attack or I'm going to faint, right? Like it's
Yeah.
one of these things is going to happen here.
Yeah.
And so many people living their lives operating out of that state because they're living, let's say, I'm almost 45 and I think about like when I was 35 and all of this kind of erupted, I was 35 but with a 6-year-old running the show because the 6-year-old was, the one who had actually done some things to stop the trauma. And so like 6-year-old me was like my little inner hero. But she was also the one that was exhausted from, like, why does it always have to be me?
Yeah.
And we get these ages and stages where we get stuck or frozen in development, and that's what the nervous system keeps kicking us back to, and the brain keeps kicking us back to help us progress forward. But if we don't understand the innate intelligence of the nervous system, we use the words activations, triggers, things like that. It's like the body's way of saying, hey, there's some information here for you. And this information is most likely a younger part of you that needs something that wasn't met back then. And if you can meet it now, what once hurt you will heal you. And we move that forward in time over time. And I think there's this, I remember being like, am I there yet? It
Yeah.
would be like journey
Yeah.
of like, I had a client ask me today, like, how long does this take? And I'm like, oh, my heart for her,
Yeah.
because it's just this, I know that feeling.
Mhm. Yeah.
And thankfully, what lasted for decades doesn't take necessarily decades to repair and heal within us if we're doing the work, but it can feel so exhausting
Yes.
in that space of like, for me, kind of the bottom barrel of emotions was chronic grief, the loss of innocence, neglect, grief and neglect, and like the loss of a lot of things in childhood, the loss of not ever having what I needed or deserved when it came to feeling safe and protected and things like that. And these aren't things I could have named until I was an adult, because my childhood wasn't horrific when you look at it outside in. It was the things that had happened that no one knew were happening.
Yeah.
And then living out that pattern throughout my life, which when you track it back, it's like, wow, of course something had to have happened, because why would these things have been like her norm in some ways? And I think that the grief of, what didn't happen for you is so
Mhm.
important to process. There's the what did happen to you, but then there's the what didn't happen for you is a really important question, because when we can answer that question, we start getting into what are the unmet needs of your past, that if you can meet those needs now for yourself will actually fill the developmental gaps so that you can move forward in creating a life where you feel genuinely safe enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're not repeating those patterns anymore.
Right. I think it goes back to what you were saying about, the inner child. We
Mhm.
talk a lot about like inner child work, and some people think of it as a joke, like I don't want to go back there. And it's like, well, but that's where all of this shit started,
And
you
I think
know?
there's a fear of having to re-experience. Instead of recognizing we don't have to re-experience it, but we do have to feel the emotion of it, and there's a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that needing to be released. And I tell all my clients too, triggers are just mirrors. They're mirrors of what you need to work on. That is the thing. It's like bouncing back on you like, oh crap. Like I'm jealous of this. Okay. What is that? What is lacking then? And this is all about like seeing things on the outer and recognizing what needs worked on the inner.
Mhm.
And it is exhausting. I mean, I'm still tired from healing. And I mean, it's a daily thing. For those of us who have done the work and who are on the other side of it, it's not all like rainbows and roses every day. I mean, there's still work that has to be put in. I mean, I just had a trigger the other day and I thought, oh crap, I thought I healed that.
Mhm.
But there's still little pieces here and there that are gonna come up. And if you are not in a space physically or mentally to handle, you're just
Yeah.
gonna dig.
Understand what's really happening, and so then it
Yeah.
spirals into something else. And, I had what I call a grief tsunami this morning kind of hit me out of nowhere. And I'm in a timeline of an anniversary of when my dad was going into hospice and passed a few days after this. So my body remembers. I've done a lot of processing on it, but it's like sometimes things just hit you.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, this is rather inconvenient, but here we go.
And the thing
Instead
is though,
instead of like, oh, I'm sure, like, what's going on?
you're like, here it comes. Okay.
Yeah. I'm like, "Oh, well, all right, here it is. I have choices. Do I shut it down? Do I let myself, like, ugly cry for a little while?" Which is what I chose. And then I showed up to teach my class, and I'm telling my, community, I said, "I'm okay. It's a grief storm. I'm good. Like, I just want you guys to know, because that's who I am. I will show up authentic. I'm not gonna pretend." And, because I think there is a misperception that when you walk this healing journey and you get to this other side, whatever that means, is that you're not gonna have further healing to do, or you're not going to have conflict in your relationships, or life is going to be rainbows and roses. And certainly things, I always say the waves get smaller and farther apart.
Yeah.
These waves that felt like tsunamis get smaller and farther apart, and you know how to approach them when they do come. Occasionally, there's the one that's like, okay, I've made it over that wave. You turn and it's like wham, right? And it knocks
Yeah.
you down from the backside.
Yes.
Your bounce back gets a little bit healthier though. I think there is space for, let's give some education around what is normalized, what is to be expected, instead of this fantasy
Yeah.
of you healed. Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah. Healing is not linear.
No.
It's not linear. And I think people have the hardest time understanding that because I did have actually somebody ask me, okay, when will I know I'm healed? And I'm like, oh, you sweet summer child. You won't until something actually like used to trigger you and you would have a nervous breakdown over actually happens. And you're like, that was minorly inconvenient. Then you'll know you're on your way. But, things will keep happening. And it's just developing that muscle of reaction and forming new relationships with the traumas.
Yeah. And it won't, and I don't know. I mean, I think I can't speak to everyone's experience. In mine, it's been more of it's an awareness of my body's not trying to hurt me right now. There's something activating inside of me that has probably been unresolved for a long time.
Yeah.
And so our ability to meet ourselves with grace, with kindness, with compassion increases when we understand that the body isn't an enemy.
Right. And we can
And
also meet it without judgment and shame. Like I had a conversation earlier today where admitting that you have a mental health issue, it's like my mental health isn't okay. It's for some reason there's still that stigma around us saying, you know what, I'm not okay right now. And that just needs to go. There
absolutely.
is absolutely nothing wrong with saying I'm not okay right now
Hmm.
because it's just temporary. It's not an identity. And we put so much emphasis on that. Well, I have to look a certain way. I have to act a certain way. I have to be a certain way. And like you were saying from the outside, it looked perfect. But on the inside, it was like, what the hell? You know, and to have to go from knowing that people saw you like that to then having them see you after things came to light. Like, what was that like for you? Like, did you
It's
put
lived in
shame and emphasis on that?
shame. So I thought shame was kind of the bedrock of the trauma. And then after doing so much work, I realized there was grief. The shame was on top of the grief. But, I lived in this realm of I'm not good enough for a long time, like a feeling of being unworthy. And that manifested as being a really, really high performing achiever. And so shame became a motivator in my life for a long time until I realized that nothing fulfills you when it's driven by shame. And that there will always be like, oh, I'm going to go get another certificate or degree, or I'm going to achieve this much success or this much money or this kind of life. And it's like inside I felt so empty and I didn't know why I felt so empty. And, I remember when I had to share with some friends after I got out of the hospital and how I felt so ashamed because here I was, right? This really, really, really well regarded yoga therapist in the area and all the tools, the hours, the training, helping people for 5 years. And I end up in a mental hospital. And the shame I had to heal from that. And because I have a very deep spiritual connection, that really helped me recognize that I really actually truly believe some of why that happened was so that I could have a lot more empathy and compassion for what people were navigating. And when I was in the hospital and went into like the group therapy sessions and things like that, I remember sitting in there and there were people from 13 to almost 80 years of age, and everyone's story was shame. Everyone was living in the same story of what's wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm unworthy. And it broke my heart open a little bit deeper to, the suffering of humans. While our stories are really unique, our sufferings aren't. And when there's so many people living in that space of like shame-based identity and how poisonous that is for us, but we adopted it out of survival, not because it's true. And I do believe we are given opportunities in life where we're met with these experiences to help us question that so that we can start to heal from it. And it took a long time because I had to learn to accept myself. I had to learn to love myself. I had to learn to understand that the things that happened to me were not my fault, that I did nothing to cause them. But I also had to also get through this, like I was responsible for healing it. And that pissed me off for a while.
Mhm.
I'm the one that has to do all of this work to heal from the things I never chose.
Right. Yeah.
And I was rageful and angry for a little while. And I was grateful that the therapist at the time I was working with warned me of that. She's like, "You're going to go through a rage phase." And I was like, "What do you mean a rage phase?" She's like, "You're going to be like raging. And, this might be what it looks like." And I was so thankful because I went through it and it was empowering and terrifying at the same time. Right,
Yeah.
but it also is what activated a deep layer of healing because I finally allowed myself to be angry for myself,
Mm.
angry for what happened to me, angry at the people who should have protected me, angry at the people who did it. And that became is actually part of what helped me break through the shame was this was never about me. It was never my fault. And I had to learn to love myself enough to keep going to heal it. And I had to learn that I was going to lose people. I lost a lot of people
Yeah.
through different stages of healing. But there was something in me, and I don't know what that something is. I'm grateful that I have it. That was like, I'm not going to settle for less than what I know I want and deserve. And that has been innate in me my whole life. And I don't know what I would call it, other than this deep, deep soul level knowing that's like I was made for more than to settle into shame. I was made for more than to let what happened to me become who I am. And, I had so many doctors say, like, people who have been through what you've been through end up in lifetime residential treatment. How are you doing this?
Wow.
And, like, a lot of different people asking, and I said, "Honestly, like, when I track it back so I can look back at, like, my relationship with horses, I can look it back to my siblings that were a source of so much fun and love in my life, that I had present parents, not emotionally available, but they were there, that there was provision, a lot of provision." Like, there were a lot of things that were good mixed in with these horrors,
Yeah.
which was also confusing in and
Yeah.
of it. And I was naturally drawn to teachings and practices that were more energetic and spiritual in nature, but use the body to find it. So it was almost like deep within there was this soul navigation guiding, hey, you're going to need this. You're going to need this. You're going to need this. And, it really wasn't until after my dad died that I think I felt full freedom from shame. There was something in losing him, and I were extremely close spiritually. He was really one of the only people in this human realm of things that I felt understood by. And when he died, it wasn't just like losing a dad, it was like losing a spiritual guide in this realm that never judged me for who I was and who I am, and always motivated me to keep going. And I think there was this freedom that came through grief. I always say, like, grief was my gateway to pure joy because there was something in that that was like, and I'm going to swear, I swear I've been trying to be good on here, but it was like this, like, I just don't fucking care anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I've lost one of my core people in my life. If you're a jerk to me or you judge me or whatever, like, fuck off. I don't care. I just didn't have the energy for it. So I always say, like, grief gave me the greatest gift, which was
Wow.
freedom. Like,
Wow.
freedom to live my life on my terms, freedom to move into greatness, freedom to question, things that I was afraid of questioning before, freedom to kind of break through these self-induced limitations that were like, well, this should be good enough, the fines.
Mhm.
And in that grief journey and that catharsis, it was like, what am I settling? Like, why?
Yeah.
After everything I've been through, I owe it to myself to no longer settle. And
Yeah.
if people don't want to meet me in that, that's okay. But it's not okay for me. And so there was a freedom that came from it. And it was like the shame started melting away because my identity was no longer based on anything having to do with what other people thought about me.
Hmm.
And I really anchored into, I mean, for me, my faith is a lot of my life. And it was like anchoring into who I know I am, not who other people had told me I am.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is a huge liberation.
Huge liberation. And you don't even know you're not liberated until you feel that like
Yeah.
moment.
Yep.
You're like,
And so, yeah. And I think it does come from this really, because I went through the same thing after my grandpa died in October of 24. And, my grandparents were everything to me. And, we lost my grandma 7 months later and she passed away last May. And after that, I'm like, you know what? I just don't give a shit anymore. I don't want to live my life to other people's standards. I don't want to be who someone else wants me to be. I don't want to act how someone else wants me to act. I am me. And I think it really did take that grief process for me to understand that I have one life and I'm not going to live it like that.
I covered in chills. Yeah. Like, absolutely.
Yeah,
And people say, like, why are you like, what is it about grief? I'm like, it was like a gateway to freedom.
it
Like, I'm
is.
actually writing my second book right now. So, my first book, I'm Strong Enough Now, God Thanks, is
Yeah.
my Journey from Trauma to Truth. And that was published back in 22. And it really gave like the historical and the teachings and things that got me through kind of the worst of the worst. And then this next book really I'm going to end up being about like the how grief became my gateway to freedom and living my life into this level where it's like I love my life and the creation of that which I want that I'd always wanted but maybe felt afraid to go for and first and when losing someone that you love so deeply for my system it was like what am I waiting for, why not, why
Yeah.
do I care, what is there really to lose?
Right.
And I recognized in, kind of studying back and some of my like Vedic teachings and other teachings is like those deep losses actually become pathways to further self realization or further enlightenment or further living in a way that is so authentic without us being cold hearted, right? There's a
Yeah.
difference between like, I don't give a, versus like, I'm actually really okay with who I am. And if you're not okay with that, that's okay too.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Yeah. Love and light, peace. I'm not for everybody,
No.
you
And I
know?
think that you're getting comfortable being okay with yourself as you are.
Hmm.
And one of the things I see a lot with working in trauma is like this constant, like, they're a self improvement project
Yeah.
instead of learning to just enjoy their life. And so, one of the things I've really started incorporating the past few years with people is helping them access like what does help them feel alive and joyful and happy and created a second company of travel off of this of choose happy travels because it's like if we don't start engaging in the things that help us feel good and access those levels, what are we healing for anyway? But when we start infusing our lives with those things, even little things at a time, like one little thing a day that opens us up to feeling that, it's a lot easier to process the hard things
Hmm.
when we're engaging with the things that help us feel good.
Well, and what we feel brings more of that feeling, right?
Yeah. And it teaches the nervous system. Like for me, I don't know about you, I had to learn that it was safe to be happy. I
Yes.
had to learn that joy was safe. I remember in
Oh, yeah.
2020, before COVID hit, and my family we went to Disneyland, and it was my first time ever going to Disneyland. And I was so excited. I was like a little kid, and there were like 40 of us that went. It was a large family experience. And like for 3 days, I was like just flying high, right? And like giddy and like all the things, right? The ears, like all of it.
Yeah.
And so I come back and I am in the worst trauma response I've had in like 4 years. And I remember asking my therapist, like, "What is happening?" And she's like, "You're in a joy trauma response." I'm like, "What the hell is a joy trauma response?"
Yeah.
She's like, "Joy doesn't feel safe for your nervous system yet. You hit your joy capacity and it flooded your nervous system out. So now you're almost in like a panic attack of joy and your body doesn't know what to do with all of that." And I'm like, I didn't even know that could happen. And so I
Yeah.
started more and more and I was like, yeah, this can actually happen.
Yeah.
And teaching, having to like titrate joy then of learning how to feel safe to have excitement and happiness and joy and all of that in my life and letting my body know that that is, also what we're created for is to live in that joy. And that was a whole nother level of understanding of why sometimes people like kind of cycle through the anxieties and the fears and all of that because their body's actually more afraid to feel good
Hmm.
than it to feel, these harder things.
Right. Yeah. Because I know for me, I wasn't, when I was in my abusive relationship, I wasn't allowed to be happy because then that meant that something was going on.
Yeah.
And it was just a really unsafe place to be. So, I mean, I know the other night we ordered DoorDash for dinner and it came with the little robot. Have you seen the little DoorDash robot yet? Okay. There is the cutest little DoorDash robot. Okay. The cutest little thing ever. And when I saw the option was available, I was like, oh my God, the robot. Because we'd see it tooling around here,
You
mapping
can no,
out.
I'm gonna have to look for that,
Oh my
okay?
God, it's awesome. It's so cute. I'll just put up a video. Because I took video. I stood in my driveway and I'm taking a video of this little DoorDash robot, and I was so happy. And everyone around me was like, it's DoorDash. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, this is so cute to me. This little robot, driving around with my food. And it was just the cutest thing ever. And you unlock it with your phone and you grab your food out. And yeah, it's the cutest thing ever. And I was like so joyful and so happy. And everyone around me was like, okay, that's for your
My
mom. Like,
nerdy because I love Star Wars is like R2-D2 is going to be delivering food to me. That's amazing.
yeah, same. And I'm like, oh my God. And it would do a little dance when I got to the curb.
Come on.
Oh my God. I was so excited and joyful. I'm like, I
Yeah,
have to go out with my phone and get a video. And, my kids are like, Mom. And I'm like, you know what? Because you don't find joy in this doesn't mean I can't. And if
absolutely.
you want to think I'm an idiot for it, then you need to find more joy in your life.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
look at that.
See
I
if it's
didn't know. But
available
it
in
is
your
that, like,
area.
those simple joys
Hmm.
that really open our system up. So, like, when people say, like, "Well, what is it?" When you're like, "Don't settle for fine," and, like, there's a thing for myself of, like, it feels like a lightning strike in my heart when it's, like, this just jolt of joy, okay,
Hmm.
that comes out, and so I call it lightning. And, so it's like people talk about glimmers and I'm like these lightning moments, right? Where we just feel like this cute little robot delivering food, right? Like, my goodness. If we can't appreciate that, those simple joys, those like moments of, lightning in us, then we're missing a lot of the goodness that's available. But I also understand that when we're living in more of a trauma response, like we're just trying to survive. We're not
Yeah.
looking for joy.
Yeah.
But then that threshold of like, life's fine, life's good. And that's like, wait a minute, there's robots, cute little robots dancing, delivering food.
Yeah. But had I been still in that trauma response, I
Yeah,
would not have found the joy in that. I would have probably just been like, oh my God.
sure.
But it was because I can now appreciate those little moments. And it's all about the little moments, right? Like, as my grandma used to say, little puddles make big streams. And it's like
Mm.
those little moments that just add up. And, when your body feels joy and you can hold that emotion, that's just going to bring more joy in. And that's what people don't understand. It's like when you start regulating your nervous system and you start to understand and let it know, like, hey, this is cool, this is safe, or like, this is the vibe, then you will start noticing more things that are just like a robot delivering your food. I mean, the eyes on it, it's got little headlights. The eyes are headlights. I mean, it is just the cutest little thing. And people are going to probably listen to this and be like, oh my God, she's a freak. But that to me is joyful
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I'm
And I
safe
think,
enough.
like, when to train myself in, like, how did I do this? And I always had to say, like, in that moment, I would capture the experience in my body, and I'll put my hand on my heart a lot when I feel those moments where it's like, "This is safe," and it's like an anchor point in,
Hmm.
where it's, "This is safe. To feel this joy is safe. To feel excited is safe. To feel like this is, like, the best thing ever," right? It's safe. Like, um, you know, I'm leaving to go to Scotland in a few days for my 4th time there. To me, it's my soul's home. And it was like the first time I went there was tears of joy because it was a remembrance. And it was like this deep, deep, deep knowing that they didn't have words for it. And I still struggle with the words for it. But like the thought of going and knowing I'm going to be there soon, like the amount of energy of joy moving through my body would have shut me down years ago. Like I could never have contained it or hold it. And I'll still like say to myself, Kate, it's safe to have this. It's
Yeah.
safe to love your life. It's safe to experience the goodness and the joy and the happiness. And there's still going to be crappy things. I always say it's like happy and crappy, right? There's going to be those things because we're human.
Right.
We want to give ourselves permission, right? To have the things in life that bring us joy.
Yeah, for sure. I love happy and crappy. You know
Oh
what
yeah.
FINE stands for, right?
Yes, you told me that, but you should say it out loud for those that don't know.
So FINE actually stands for fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. So when you say you're fine, think about that. And on that note,
No, 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 no. Yes.
thank you so much, Kate. It was so great to catch up and have you on the podcast and have your generous wisdom as always.
Thank you. I loved it. I love talking with you.
Yeah, this is a really good conversation to have because so many people are like, now what? You know, okay, I'm going through this trauma journey. When's it going to end? When am I going to feel it? And then, to hear people who have actually been through it, and it's like, here's your sign,
Yeah, and,
there
you
will
know,
be signs.
I said to myself a lot, like, "The best is yet to come." I still use it, like, "The best is
Yeah,
yet to come. The best is
yeah.
yet to come." What and I'll offer this question that was offered to me years ago, what was really powerful was, "How much good can you handle?"
Mm,
And opening your heart up to even more goodness, because when we're at that capacity point where it's like, "Oh my gosh, could it get even better?" Yes, it can.
yes.
We gotta open ourselves up to that.
Yeah. If you would have asked me that question 20 years ago, I wouldn't have known how to answer it.
Me neither.
Yeah. I would have said, I don't know. Does it get better? I don't know.
You're like, "What is good?"
Yeah. What does good mean? Yeah. And now I'm like, hell yes.
Bring on the goodness
All in.
and the DoorDash robots.
Seriously. Look him up. He might be available because you're just north of me. So it might be available in your area.
Likes to order DoorDash and be like, "Are you having the robot deliver? I wanna see it."
Autonomous delivery. Yeah. I mean, it was just the cutest little guy.
I love it.
Yeah. Name was Dot.
I
Had it
love
written on the back. Just Dot. I don't know.
that.
I don't know why I'm so giddy over this. It's so cute to me.
Love the joy, it makes you excited.
I
Yeah,
know. It's like I might order DoorDash again just to have the little robot bring it to me.
I hope you do. You deserve all that joy.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
little moments of joy. Well, okay, if someone wants to work with you, where you're taking clients, right?
I am. I see clients, I mentor, I train. So kateshipp.com. You can also find me. Instagram is at kateship333. Facebook is the same. So I'm active on social media. I also recently started a Substack called The Lightning Path. So if you want deeper writing, I love to write. That will be where you'll find more of the deeper stuff. But the other more, surface level social media. Mhm.
Yeah. And I will put all of those links in the show notes.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thanks for hanging out with us on Fine, I'll Talk About It. If today's episode got you thinking, hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And if you want more real talk, more perspective shifts, and more finally someone said it moments, leave a quick review. It helps other people find the show. You can connect with me on Instagram at Inspired Action Wellness or my website, inspiredactionwellness.com, for more inspiration like this. We'll see you in the next episode.